Hi guys, just want to make a quick video about the weekend's games, having a beer, having a tafel. Lovely stuff. Doing this one on my own, having a bit of weather today. Yesterday was luckily a nice day. We were at the game at Loftus, and it was a fantastic day out. Half the stadium, I think about half the stadium was full. I don't know the exact numbers, but they dropped the ticket sales to 25 Rand a ticket, which is absolutely dirt cheap. In euros and pounds, it's almost nothing. It's change. It's like a pound, just over a pound for a ticket. Yeah, really nice day out. Just going to run through the week's games. First match of the weekend was Sharks versus Dragons in Durban, and Dragons line 15th on the log, the Sharks 8th, and the Sharks won 51-3. And a lot of standout performances, especially by the player of the match, Werner Kok, who had an amazing game, scored a brilliant try. Individual effort, stepped a whole bunch of players, no one could touch him. Product of the sevens, South African sevens, the Blitzbokke, quite a few guys, Ruan Nal as well, who plays for the Stormers, Kurtley Arendse, quite a few guys who've worked their way from the sevens that are doing really well in the URC, and it's great to see that these guys get an opportunity to play at what you could call a higher level of rugby. So they dominated 51-3, a lot of tries, a lot of standout players in that. Not too much you can read into it, because it is unfortunately the Dragons are really struggling, and they are 15th, one position above the bottom of the log. And then Glasgow Warriors got a bonus point at Zebre, same as well. Unfortunately, Zebre not doing brilliantly. They're on must be almost a 22 game losing streak now. Feel a bit sorry for the guys, but easy win for Glasgow, and they are third on the log, so they're definitely looking sure for a playoff spot. To Benetton Connacht, a bit surprising that it was a close game. Good for Benetton as well. They're 13th, Connacht 9th, so both bottom half of the table. And Connacht won that one away, so it's tricky to play away always. Won it away 21-17. And then the game at Loftus was a big game for the Bulls. We were at the stadium to support the Bulls. Big day, the biggest crowd in Loftus probably, I would guess, in the last 4 or 5 years. Even before COVID, we didn't get crowds like that. So great initiative by Jake White to drop the ticket price to 25 Rand a ticket across the board for the entire stadium. And there were a lot of people out. It was amazing scenes, amazing to see. And I think the crowd actually helped the Bulls. Bit of a tricky start, made a lot of mistakes in the first half, dropped a few balls, and they just weren't sharp enough in the first half, and Ulster looked really good. But so high above sea level, it was a fairly hot day, about 28 degrees Celsius. They started struggling when they came out in the second half, especially because the Bulls managed to work through a few phases, and they managed to carry the ball, which obviously then tires out the opposition, and they started making silly mistakes. And the Bulls managed to score 4 tries and get the bonus point in that match. Great performance again by Kurtley Arendse, scored an intercept try. Player of the match was Ruan Orkio, who has an amazing work rate. He's a slightly smaller frame lock, but puts in the hard yard, stole a few balls at the lineouts. But I thought Ulster played well in the first half. Both their centres looked very good. Dwayne Vermeulen stole quite a few balls. It must have been quite an occasion for him to be back at Loftus, and he put in a very good performance. But loose forwards again, Marshall Kutsia, Bulls locks. Johan Grobelaar is just looking better and better every game. Chris Smith had a solid game. Centres played well, wings played well. Madosh Tambwe finished well. And I think the crowd really helped the Bulls. And they're sitting in 7th position, so they're really going to scrap for a playoff place. And Ulster sitting pretty in 2nd still, and they are probably assured of a playoff place. Going back to Ireland, where the conditions suit them better than it does here. Then Lions Edinburgh, which was a great win for the Lions. They won all 4 of their last home games, and they've moved up the log. And Edinburgh is a strong side, beat the Sharks last week. Pity the Sharks lost. They would have been in a much better position on the log if they won that game last week. It was a tricky game for them. It was very, very wet, and the conditions actually probably suited Edinburgh in that game. But that's no excuse. It's a game that they should have won if they want to really compete in the competition. The Lions won the game 15-9. They scored 2 tries to none against Edinburgh. Very close finish with 3 minutes to go. Edinburgh had the ball about 7 meters out from the Lions try line, and they managed to get a penalty. Didn't kick the penalty out, and then there was a little controversial moment where Emiliano Buffelli threw the ball back in field when he caught it, and it was adjudged to have been forward, and he protested a lot, and that forward pass actually clinched the game for the Lions, because from there they could take the scrum and just kick the ball out, and a great win for them against a strong side. And then the Stormers against Ospreys. Interesting game. Stormers started well again. They scored 2 early tries. Marnie Libok had a big influence on the game with a few clever line breaks and so on. And then it became a bit of a stalemate, but in the end, a great try by Leo Linzas, who's also impressing a lot. Looks very good. He sort of burst onto the scene and then disappeared for a while. But at the moment, he's putting his hand up to be a Springbok. A little bit concerned about the backup at fly-off, looking at the Springbok games coming up later in the year. Marnie Libok being one of the guys putting his hand up to be backup to Andre Pollard and Elton Jantjies. But even though he looks very good in these provincial games, I still have a few concerns. From 2 penalties, he didn't kick the ball out into touch. Missed by a couple of meters, missed the touchline by a couple of meters. So those basic things you'll have to work at. But I mean, he's proved a lot of people wrong, and he's a very skillful player. I'm just not sure with those mistakes. He's a bit up and down if he will make the step up to Springbok rugby, but we'll have to wait and see if he gets his chance. But Evan Roos, strong again, big contender to take over from Dwayne when the time comes, from Dwayne Vermeulen. Ospreys 11th, Stormers 6th on the log. Also, together with the Sharks and the Bulls, they'll have to work hard to keep that position and to stay in the playoff places. Ospreys 11th, so they're sort of a little bit out of it, but they still have an outside chance. Then the Scarlets beat Cardiff 35-20. Very good win for the Scarlets. They are 10th and Cardiff's 14th, so they're also Scarlets still fighting to get into the top 8. A big game last night was Leinster-Munster, and what a game with all the Irish internationals back. It still looks like a bit of a different league to me. If you look at all the mistakes that the Bulls made, that's a game that I watched live, so I'm making reference to that specific match. The precision that both Leinster, but specifically Leinster and Munster, play with, and everything they do looks like such well-rehearsed training ground moves, and they come off and the passes stick, and they just look in a league apart with all the internationals back after the Six Nations. I still have my doubts of whether the Sharks, Stormers or the Bulls would be able to beat Leinster and even Munster in Ireland the way they played last night with all their international players back. So there's actually quite a bit of hard work left for the South African players, but in the last 4 weeks the South African teams only lost 1 match, and it was the Sharks against Edinburgh. So it was really nice to see 4 out of 4 again this week for the South Africans, and the way the referees actually, the 50-50 calls actually go towards the South Africans in our conditions with a bit of crowd support was interesting to see. Still a few calls even that went the way of the Bulls that I thought, wow, that's a bit of an interesting call in a few of the games, but we're not going to carry on too much about that. We're just happy that we can watch rugby live here in South Africa, and we saw some amazing rugby in the last 4 weeks, especially this weekend. A great win for specifically the Bulls and for the Lions, who had difficult games, and guys like Vincent Chituka really putting their hands up, and a few of the other South African players, Mani Labok, Kurtley Arends, those guys played brilliant rugby this weekend. But the cream of the week was still Leinster-Munster. Was an amazing game, an amazing contest, a big rivalry, a big Irish derby game, and it's going to be difficult to beat Leinster. Difficult for anyone to beat Leinster in Europe, I think, the way they are playing at the moment. Okay, that's it. Cheers.